The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, I'd like to welcome everybody to the KYTC Design webinar on modeling intersection radii. Thank you for coming. There's a couple things I want to mention before we actually start the webinar. One is we've actually had a couple of issues with people coming in late during the webinars and actually, I guess, only spending a certain amount of time on the webinar. We can actually monitor that stuff while we're watching the webinar, and we're having some issues with people not getting their professional development hours. I would like to mention that if you're going to want to get professional develop hours, we need you to attend the entire webinar. I'm sorry about that, but that's kind of the standard that we're held to give those hours out. At any rate, if you're going to attend the webinars and you want professional development hours, you do need to attend the entire webinar. Another thing I'd like to mention is that this is the first webinar that we will be doing without Jason Littleton. As some of you all know, he actually left the state and has gone to work for American, and he's not only left a hole in our branch, but a hole in our hearts. And if I could sing right now, I'd probably sing some sort of love song. I'm thinking along the lines of Whitney Houston's "I'll Always Love You." In all seriousness, though, I think I can speak for many people here in design and say that he will be missed and is missed. Moving on from that, I would actually mention some changes that are coming in our schedule due to an increase in workload. We're actually going to have to move Wendy's webinar and creating and detailing cross sections to April 8th in lieu of March 18th. And again, this is because of workload. And we're also going to be changing the schedule so that we're having webinars every second Wednesday of the month instead of every other Wednesday. And again, we're actually having Wendy's webinar on creating and detailing cross-sections on April 8th, and the use of point controls and end conditions and parametric constraints will be on May 13th, and that I'll actually be presenting that one. So everybody be very forgiving in your rating of me if you don't mind on that one. Also like to remind you that past webinars, videos of the past webinars, we can actually post them to YouTube. If you actually type into Google KYTC, Highway Design, Software and Support, it'll take you to the page that actually has the webinars on it. Or you can go to the Highway Design page and click on Software and Support. Also, if you have any questions and microstations and roads project-wise, you can actually email KYTC CAD support at ky.gov, and we'll try to get you those answers. Again, I'd like to thank you for attending. And I'd like to introduce somebody else who's near and dear to our hearts here, and that is Patrick Stone. Patrick, are you ready there? Patrick, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready, Chris. Yeah, buddy. You got it. Okay, like Chris was saying, I'm Patrick Stone. I'm going to be showing you a little bit about modeling intersection radii. I'm hoping to get through this in less than an hour. So hopefully about 50 minutes, so you can get your time served for the hour. First thing I want to show you is the area that we're going to be modeling. You know, we get a lot of models in here that are just, you know, terminated right at the end. You know, you just run this corridor, the approach corridor, to the mainline corridor, and they just terminate without any radiuses on them. You know, and when you're cutting your cross sections and doing your quantities, you know, you're not getting, you know, you're losing this area right in here for the quantity. So anyway, whether you buy into modeling the radiuses or not, I'm going to show you how we do these, and we'll go from there. So I've already modeled the left side of this approach. And when you're standing on it, the stationing on this is running left to right, of course. And, you know, I'm going to be talking about the left radii and the right radii. You know, you're standing here or you're driving down through here. You know, this is going to be on your left, this is going to be on your right. I know most people understand that, but just wanted to point that out to avoid any confusion with which radiuses we're talking about when we're going through this. We're going to be using the multi-center curve command, and we'll use the multi-center curve command to do this, and we'll use the center curve. I know it's kind of ironic, but that's what we're going to do. And I wanted to point out another thing as a side note. You know, if you go through and you model these, this is in a curve, the approach is in a curve, the main line's in a curve. Now, if you just go through and model this and use secondary alignments where it's going to come out and hit this, you're going to have this area in here, as you can see, where you're not going to get, you know, all the way up to the edge of pavement that we want. So in this process, what we're going to do is we're going to make a corridor over here. We would make a corridor here, corridor here. We've already got an approach corridor and a mainline corridor. And I'm going to show you how we've been doing this with the template. To go out, we're going to intersect the edge of pavement coming up here as a corridor point. And then at this point, we're going to come down here and intercept the vertical and horizontal alignment of this road. And this is the same method I'd use on my entrances or, you know, any kind of approach, entrance, anything. I like the 3-center curve. It's pretty handy. First thing I want to do is show you the templates that we're going to be using. So let's pull up. And I'm going to be using, let's see, the example 4-lane median. I just want to show you that this, you know, I just basically took a job we've been working on and jammed this mainline template on it because it's got ditches and stuff on it just for presentation sakes. You can see how it works. Really, we're in a cut. All you're going to really see is this situation right here. We're dealing with this right side, and all we're going to do is tie it in to this edge of pavement right here. We're not going to show, you know, the alignment did include going across, but for just the purposes of this webinar, we're talking about this radius here. And these are the templates that are delivered with the standards. Now this one is a job-specific, this other template I'm going to show you is a job-specific template that we used. And it's basically, I mean, it's just an approach. It's just a basic approach template. What I'm pointing out here is we've got, you know, you've got your edge of pavements and everything we're going to tie into on both of these approaches, or both of the templates, the main line. And it works the same way. It's no frills. These are all going to be in a cut. We're in a pretty good cut here, so you're not going to see any of these other ditches formed. You're just going to see the V's. And then I want to show you the radii template. And all I did was I took this template right here, I copied it, I trimmed off all this stuff so all the point names would line up, and made a left radius and a right radii. And the only thing I had to do was I moved this point. I took the constraints off this left edge of pavement, and then I named these points tie points. Just, you can call them whatever you want. I like using them as tie because it's easy for me to remember when I'm telling this point what to seek as far as the edge of pavement or the center line. And we've got the same thing going on for the right radius. All I did was mirrored it and changed the names of them, so it said right EP. You know, I leave all these at tie. I guess you could label it left tie, but it doesn't matter what you name it as long as you remember what you named this to tie it down to. Okay, so the first step we're going to do is we're going to set up both of these corridors. We're going to go in here and we're going to set up the mainline corridor and the approach corridor. And we're going to run them and I'm going to show you how they just tee into each other and how we're going to clean it up. I just want you to remember how the radius is smoothed out here and everything. And for what we're doing here, we're going to talk a little bit about the target aliasing and the clipping from the models. We're going to talk about this. I've set all this to clip none right now because I don't want it to clip at this point. And we'll touch briefly on that. If there's interest, we can probably set up another time to go more in depth on all that clipping. I'll be viewing the proposed triangles with the mesh when we're, if I can remember to do that. We'll do the mesh, and like I showed in a previous webinar, you know, it's going to make all those triangles as one. It's kind of like having your graphic group on. It updates quicker, it deletes quicker. I like the mesh. I haven't found a reason that you wouldn't want to use it. So we're going to hop in another drawing. This is just a drawing of the finished intersection. I want to give you an idea of what it's going to look like, provided I don't mess anything up, which is a strong possibility. So let's jump into another file right quick. And this is just a copy of the KYTC 3D seed file. I changed it to model because I didn't want to go in there and delete everything out and, you know, have to recreate that stuff. But anywho, let's go through. Let me show you what we've got set up here. We've got the mainline corridor set up and their approach set up and the left radius that I've already set up just so we can get through this in timely fashion. First thing I like to do is go in and view the mainline alignment, and then I like to view the approach. Make sure we're in the right area. You can see we're just going to concentrate. This is a decent sized job with a lot of approaches and entrances, but we're just going to do one of these. I just picked this one because it was in the horizontal curve, and we're just going to tie it in. We're basically going to be working in this area. So I'll try to quit rambling now, and we'll just run this thing. If we're in the main line, we want this as our existing surface. We're going to run this down through there. And you can see the area that I've confined it to. I don't want to run the whole thing. And you can see it updating here. We'll go ahead and run this surface because you're going to actually need, I like to have a surface for each one and then run them together. So first thing we're going to do is do the mainline surface. You know, this horizontal curves, it densifies just like it says using the chord height tolerance. I generally leave that off. I mean, I put event points in and everything where I want extra cross sections cut, so I don't use it very often. We're going to set all this to clipping as none. Like I said, we'll talk about the clipping a little bit later. And we'll just run this one. We're just going to display features at this point. We can go back and show components later. But I just want to kind of show you what we're doing here with this. Okay, and I just want to show you that, you know, if you turn the clipping on, we're going to have some of this clipped out from the approach, but we're not going to do that at this point. We're just going to run the approach. I just want to kind of give you an idea of what we're doing. See, we're in the closer we get to main line, more cut we're in. So we're going to run this approach template and display it. And then we can show the mesh. But what I want to point out here is we've had several questions of late over the feature filter list. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. I thought most people were. If you are, sorry to bore you, but I'm going to run through this real quick. Okay, what this does, like if you turn this lock on, like I'm going to use the exclude from triangulation that we've set up down here. These are all set up. You can customize them. You can add to these and build your own. What it's doing is it's going to turn off all the it's going to turn off all the subgrade features for this one. That's the way this one is set up. But what you have to do is you have to pick a feature, you have to pick a filter, and then you have to turn the lock on. And I won't turn it on at this point. We'll view these triangles, and I'll rotate it up and just show you what I'm talking about. And I won't do every one of these surfaces. I know you don't want to watch me do that. But we will view it, you know, even if I have this picked, I don't have it turned. Well, let me turn it off. I do have it turned on. And you can tell by the way it's turned off. So what it'll do, even with that filter turned on, or selected, not turned on, you'll see the subgrade lines. So we'll just view the triangles, and I'm going to view them as a mesh so they're easier to delete. And then we'll rotate this. We're just going to look at this end down here. And as you can see, you've got your surface, you got your subgrade, you get your rock, you got all your triangles in there. I personally think that's kind of a pain when you're modeling and going through it if you're just working on the finished grade. And what we can do is if we turn on the filter, we won't get that subgrade. So let me go back up to a top view. I want to get out of that. And I'm just going to delete this. And now we're going to turn that on. Make sure it's on there. And we will just do the mesh. We're not going to see any of that stuff. And I think it just helps when you're working in your surface you don't see that. I want to point that out. I know that doesn't have a whole lot to do with the modeling the radii, but there you go. Okay, we're going to view these horizontal alignments one more time. And the reason I like to view them is I've had trouble when you're building this secondary alignment or the multi-curve, you know, multi-center curve for the intersection radii. If you don't have the actual alignment, it seems to actually pick it, but it doesn't highlight it. It drives me nuts because then I'll end up with, what you'll do is when you start adding these radii over here, the more times you pick, it'll just add. Like if I name this one, like we're going to name it like radii right, radii right, and then if I click it, it'll add a radii right, and then if I click it again, it'll add a radii, you know, RU, and then you'll go up the alphabet. You might end up with 10 of them, and if you're not paying close attention, and it's not a big deal when you're only working on one intersection, but if you've got a whole job, you can end up with, you know, a bunch of junk in your geometry file, and you wonder where they came from. But if you see like radii LT and then radii LU, you know, and you've got them running down the alphabet, you've clicked too many times. And we can see most of this work that we're going to be doing in this view of the roadway designer. So let's go through, and I'm trying to take my time with this. I know I'm going slow, but if I move these dialogues around too quick, we found that, I'll be talking about it and you won't even see it. So bear with me. We're trying to slow it down a little bit so I'm not talking about stuff that's not on your screen yet. So let's go and find the multi-center curve. Well, first of all, I'm going to run this. I like to see all the features in there. So I'm going to show them. And I wouldn't go view all these features all the time, but for showing this stuff, I think it helps. So you can see what we're talking about. What we're going to do right now is we're going to make a horizontal and vertical alignment that goes from this edge of pavement to this edge of pavement. And one thing I should point out too is I've already went through and the super has been set up on these for the main line and the approach. And it's important that you put the super on now because you're going to be picking off points. And I'm telling it to drape it over the surface. So like when I'm putting in this radius point here, you'll see that I click on, I say I want it to use, corridor point, and then I'm going to use a surface. Well, if this surface doesn't have your super elevation in, and then you add the super elevation, well, this alignment's going to stay wherever you place it. It's not going to follow this edge of pavement up and down. So I just wanted to point that out to you. So let's go through and use this command. What we're going to do is we're going to use the one center. The radius on this is going to be 50 foot. Now, the 50 foot on this radius is just, this was a decision that we made from the design criteria. You'd have to take into account what kind of curve you're doing, if it's an entrance, if it's approach, what kind of vehicles are going to be on the road as far as where this 50 foot comes from. And you'll have to look in the, the geometric guides to see what you want to do. So we're going to make this 50 foot. And one thing I want to point out, this offset right here, the help does a good job explaining this. It shows you where the offsets are going to come from, from your centers of your alignment. Now this center line is over here. I don't want you to get confused with the center line of this driving edge because it's from the center line of your alignment to the edge. So we're going to go 50. You can click this, from your center line alignment to the edge of pavement. I know that this one is going to be 44. This is 44 foot. Not 444. 44 foot. Then the second one off the approach is going to be 16 foot. I don't have to fill out the rest of this. Go to the advanced. What I'm going to call this one is going to be radii right. Now, you would probably, it's up to you how you want to name these things, but what I usually do is I'll start out with, like this one would be radii right, whatever the station is, and then radii left, whatever the station is for this entrance or approach. And you can put that in the description or wherever you want. We're going to set this to centerline main. We're going to turn on the create vertical alignment. Now I want this to be using the main line that I ran, and for the secondary alignment, I want that to be the approach. And that's because this came from the main line, that came from the approach. Get that off the screen. Now it's going to come up and identify the first alignment. We identified that one. We identified the second one. and which quadrant. And make sure you read your prompts down here. So if you don't accept it, you get nothing. And a lot of people at this point would like to review these. You know about what your elevation range is. You can look here, and what I'm looking for is to see if I've done something incorrectly, that something was wrong with this feature or this feature that shoots off, you know, down into hell somewhere. You know, you don't want elevation 0. And another thing you can do is just open you up another view, close some of this stuff down. And what we'll do is I'll cut a profile. So we'll just do profile, create profile. What we want to see here is the mainline surface and the approach surface. Let's make sure I get a decent preference. I don't care about the existing on this particular deal. Let me see where I put that. Okay. Now what we've got here, you can hover over this and it'll show you which approach, you know, what's going on here. You can pick it. This is going to be the main line. Let me do the information. It's just giving me that, but if you hover over it, it should show you, okay, surface main line, and that's the surface approach. What this is, you know, this is showing the center line of that radius. So if you go back over to view 1, it's a profile along this. Now we had some confusion the other day on this of exactly what it was, and some people thought it was actually the 2 center lines and couldn't understand why it was dropping down this ravine, if you will. So anyway, let's view that. So you can see that we're lined up pretty good. I'm going to leave that the way it is. That's the way I want it. I want to seek that. I've smoothed out that radius down through there. And I'm getting some questions in over here, and I'll get back to them. We'll do the questions at the end. Okay, so we know this one's good. What you would be looking for if it was bad, like you may have a spike or something in your DTM, in your proposed or the approach DTM, and then this thing would shoot down, have a big V in it, and you're not going to want that because it's going to be in your model. So you want to check for spikes. And now we got the horizontal vertical alignment. You know, for time's sake, we're not going to do the other side, and you can do this a lot quicker. You know, I'm trying to take it as slow as I can so we can get it recorded, and you know, you can see the prompts. So we've already done the left side. The next step is just going to be to create the corridors. Hop back in the top view. So what we're going to do now, and as you know how this thing works, you know, this is the roadway designer. Let me make sure. You pick it from Modeler, roadway designer. I'm sure everybody's used to using that thing. And then we're going to manage the corridors. We're going to create a corridor here, and we're going to call it radii. We're going to call it radii right. Yeah, this thing it lags when we're broadcasting, so bear with me here. Okay. I don't care what the surface symbology is. It's not really going to matter. The alignment is going to be the one we just created, the radii right. The stationing, I want to run it the entire length. And don't get balled up on the stationing. You know, I've seen people go in and try to match the stationing with the mainline stationing. It's not going to matter. You know, and it doesn't really matter if this alignment runs from left to right, you know, from the main line to the approach or the approach to here. You know, the only thing is, and you can manipulate these around and only use one template. Just make sure your left's on the left and your right's on the right, or you'll have, you know, features that look kind of funky in there. And we're going to run it the whole way. So we're going to add this. We've got the radius. Then we're going to go to the next step. You can see up here we've got this going up here. Now, if you see what I just did where I moved this down through here, it will, you got to be careful when you're doing that because it can mess up what your options are. See, I went to the end because it's on 50 and it's not a very big curve. It's jumping all over the place. But anyway, you can either change it like that or you can move it. I'm going to run this the entire length. This is a 50-foot curve. The way I've been liking to do this is just I do a tenth of it. I think that's pretty standard, so it'll be a five-foot interval. And what that means is going to drop a template every 5 foot and hopefully do what I tell it to do. Now the template that we're going to use here is going to be the radius right, because we're on the right side, not that one. This one right here. Okay, and you can see what we're going to get there. Now for time purposes, I'm not going to model the whole thing and show you every step. Originally, I was going to do this part and then show you. But what we're doing here is we're going to tell it with our controls to go in here, and I want the tie point to intersect the edge of pavement. So we'll pull the mower back up, and we'll use our point controls. What we're going to do is set up a point control here, and like I was saying earlier, you can pick these points. We want to do the tie point because we're going to have this point intersect right down through here, and it's going to go from a slither to a pretty good size chunk. We're going to do both because we want it controlled with that edge of pavement, the horizontal and the vertical. And on this one, we're going to run a corridor point. And the corridor is main line that we ran before, and the reference point is going to be right outside edge of pavement. And this is where you can get in trouble. You know, if you're picking these, which you can't with this corridor, if you pick the base, I mean, it's going to do exactly what you ask it to do. And then you'll see a bunch of problems in your model. Now the start station limit is going to be at the start, of course, but I want to stop this particular feature when it hits the center line because I'm going to change controls at that point. So if you hold the control key down, it'll take you to the plan view, and you can scroll down through here, and I want to line up this with that point right there. Let's see where and we'll do the intersection point right here. Okay, and that's 47. We're going to add that point. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take this same tie point, and I want to make it holding on to the center line, horizontal and vertical alignment. So we'll make this alignment. We want it to do both again, and we want this to be the approach. Now it'll keep that point there and run all the way to the end. So we're going to add this. And now when we run this, you can see it's starting to form what we want. See how it went? And now that's the edge of pavement, and we've got this little point right here. And generally what we do is you go in and add your key station there. And you can just hold your control key down on this one too, go down and pick that exact point. You could type in the station. I like to use these. I think it's easier to use these. And we add it. Now when we run through it, it should be a nice crisp corner there. So with that done, we've got it constrained to our edge of pavement, and we've got it constrained to our center line. What we're going to do now is set the parametric constraint. And we can view this, and maybe that's the best thing to do, is to run this and show you the problems we're going to have, because we're going to have a problem right here with this paved shoulder, and the ditch is not going to line up for sure. So what we'll do is we'll start one with the right radius. See the problem we've had, and we've got the edge of pavement, but we've got an extra shoulder point here that I want to use a parametric constraint to fix. Now, I'll fix this one with a parametric constraint, because what I'm going to do is, this is 4 foot through here. It's 4 foot wide here. I want to be 0 here. So I'll take a parametric constraint and constrain that to this edge of pavement and make it go from 4 to 0. Now this I will use with to fix this, I'm going to assign this to this ditch right that I'd already made, just alignment. That way it'll smooth this deal out through here. So let's go through and we'll set up the parametric constraint first. And then when you start setting up this parametric constraint, we're looking for earth shoulder, and I know that I'm tying the earth shoulder down to the paved shoulder, and that's what we're going to do. Be careful when you're doing these, because earth shoulder width, earth shoulder slope, depends on what you want to do. I'm going to run it the entire length because I want a constant taper. Do it however you see fit. And you can see once we add this in, let's see here. You can see how it's pulling it in there. So you don't have to view it every time to see what's going on. Now our ditch is still screwed up because we're going to have to take the point control to that. But that's how you would fix that with the point control. And let's do that's with the parametric constraint. Now let's add a point control to, I think it's called DV. Yeah, right, DV. And then what we want to do, I'm going to control both of them. I know Wendy showed in a previous webinar that you want to do your vertical and then you're not messing up your slopes. But in this radius, for this presentation, I'm doing both. And I'm going to run it the entire length. And then we can see how it moves out. Okay. So now we've got the point control set up. We're going to be ready to combine both of all these surfaces. Let's just delete all this. And like I said, I already had the left side created, so I don't have to worry about that one. We'll go ahead and make a radii right. I'm not going to display it though. Okay. Now we're going through here and we're going to make these puppies. We've got several things that we need to fix. The clipping options, I want to briefly touch on those. the first thing I'm going to do is go and talk about the target aliasing. I think this can be confusing. You know, you have to set this when you're setting this up to the different corridors. So let's set this to the mainline corridor. So you can kind of see what's going on here. So we want to go to target aliasing. I want to go in here, and on this one, all I want this to find is the existing combined. You know, and depends on what you're doing. You know, the help on this is pretty strong. You know, it explains it pretty well of what's going on. So if you have trouble, you know, get confused on this aliasing, which, you know, I do. I get confused on it. Just look at it. It's pretty helpful. And then you're going to have to set that on your different alignments. So on the radius right, not parametric constraint. On the radius right, we're going to go through and we want to make sure we choose a corridor point. You know, we've got surfaces down here, but make sure you hit the corridor on these if there's a corridor available. So we're going to go with the corridor mainline, and we want the corridor approach right. Make sure you pick the right one. And the last thing we want to do is you always want to give it the surface. Okay? Because if it can't find anything else, it'll at least find that existing combined. Let's do the same thing on the radius left. So once again, we're going to do the corridor mainline, corridor approach, and then if all else fails that. I think the only one I haven't set up is the approach. So on this, the approach, we want the corridor mainline. We want the surface existing combined. Now I'm going to use closest, and the reason I'm doing that is over here in this curve, where these two intersect, it can get a little funky because we're sharing a line here from the mainline cut to the approach cut. And just remember one thing, when you turn on target aliasing, you're taking control from the program, and you're telling it what you want to seek. And I'm telling you right now, if you get these out of order, you can really you drive yourself nuts. And it searches on these for these target aliasing. It's going from the top to the bottom unless you turn on use closest. So if you wanted to find the existing surface first, you know, you would pick it, move up, move down. And now another thing that you have to do is, if you don't want a bunch of lines going up through here, you have to turn your clipping on. Now I set them to clip all. You can do, you know, less debatable, but the way I'm rolling with it is, and you do that through the Surface tab. You highlight them all, or select all. Your clipping options. Let's turn the features back on before I forget to. And we're going to set them to clip all. Now you can tell this is the order, you know, that they're in to clip, the priority. So if you get in here and you don't see something as a corridor, you'll do like I've done before, and you will have accidentally put the surface in there. So go back and make sure you've you've selected the corridor. And then we'll run this puppy. We'll call it finished. Okay. Now we can view the triangles on this. And you can see we've got everything coming up to the edge of pavement and doing pretty much what we want here. You know, we've got our ditch in there going around here. And that's how I work through these and save them. You know, one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this surface is, you know, this is a finished surface. Where I've clipped those components out, it's going to mess up your subgrade. You're going to more than likely clip out those subgrade components. So when you cut your cross sections, you know, just be aware of that. Chris, I think we're ready to do any questions that we have. Okay, I see one of the questions. It says, what it says is DTM triangles come in as a group even without the mesh option. Yeah, that's true, but they're not. They're as a graphic group. You know, this is as one big mesh. It generates faster. I like the mesh better. I think it's easier to deal with. Now, when you're working in it, you've got to update it. Yeah, when you're deleting triangles, the mesh, it'll review, but you have to, you know, review them. So, Chris, do you see any more questions?
Actually, we just got a couple here.
Okay.
You might want to answer, and or you might want to hand them off to somebody else. I think one of the things too with the mesh is that the surface actually comes in as a single element, which allows the less memory, and it allows it to load quicker and delete faster as well. So you don't have any crashes and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. I see one that's talking about how do you fix that subgrade. And what we've been doing is offsetting that finished surface down and just, you know, rerun. I just take those features and set them down on top of the subgrade to create that subgrade. I mean, if anybody else has got a better way to address that, clipping of the subgrade, we can certainly look into it. And if that's not answering the questions you have, we can call us. You know, Chris showed that support line, and we'll look into it. You know, if we don't know the answer right now, we'll get back to you.
Absolutely. One of the things too, it looks like we have two questions on turn lanes. I know that that's a topic that's been brought up and actually maybe in a future webinar. So
okay,
get answered later. Are there any other questions?
Is there another one? I thought I saw one come in.
That was actually looked like Troy answering a question there. Yeah.
So okay.
Lane you should tie to the turn lane edge. So
yeah. Just the edge of the turn lane. You know, if you're doing your secondary alignment there, you can just treat it like I treated that edge of pavement. Just whatever your turn lane edge is. You know, and this job here, you know, it went across. I just clipped this off. It went across here, and we modeled this, you know, around here and everything. But I just clipped it off because we were, you know, for time's sake. I don't want to spend. I know you didn't want to listen to me ramble for 2 hours, so we just did these.
Okay. Well, if we don't have more questions, thanks, Patrick, for doing this. You did a good job. I really like that the way those radiuses look. Anyhow, right now I'd like to launch a couple of poll questions, so let's go ahead and start with the first one. We'll wait here while we're getting some answers. Okay, it looks like we actually got most of our answers in, and we got an 82% yes and 18% no, so we're actually getting quite a few people that are coming in and doing
Hey, Chris, are you showing that, or are you still showing my screen?
Is it not actually showing up? Yeah, the polls are showing up, but the results aren't.
You probably need to switch it over to your screen.
Okay, I think that did it.
Okay.
Okay, and then we're going to do another poll here. What types of radii do you currently model? Looks like we've got most of our answers in there. Close that poll. And share our, looks like most people are saying that they actually do approaches. Quite a few people doing major intersections, and some people don't do it at all. So, all right. I would actually like to thank everybody for attending, and I would actually ask you to don't forget to do our survey after this. Very valuable for us actually selecting future topics. So if you could just wait until the webinar is closed, and the survey should pop up, and we ought to be able to get that information from you, ideas that we really appreciate to do future topics on webinars. I'd also like to remind everybody to we actually aren't going to be doing webinars every 2 weeks. We'll be doing them once monthly on the second Wednesday of every month. Yeah, thank you for coming, and we'll hopefully see you next time. Thank you very much.